Good afternoon, and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Antonia Jaramillo, and you are watching the post-launch news conference of NASA's and Boeing's crew flight test mission. At 10:52 a.m. Eastern Time today, NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams launched aboard Boeing's Starliner spacecraft and United Launch Alliance's Atlas V rocket from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Launch Complex 41. Butch and Suni are now on their way to the International Space Station, and joining us in the room today to speak more about this mission and next steps are NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, Ken Bowersox, Associate Administrator for NASA Space Operations Mission Directorate, Steve Stich, Manager for NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Joel Montalbano, Deputy Associate Administrator for NASA Space Operations Mission Directorate, Mark Nappi, Vice President and Program Manager for Commercial Crew Program at Boeing, and Tori Bruno, President and CEO of United Launch Alliance. This group of experts will be taking questions here in the room and also over the phone, but before we jump to the question and answer portion, each of our panelists will say a few opening remarks. We'll begin with Administrator Nelson.
Thanks so much. The first time that a human was launched into orbit on an American rocket was an Atlas V. And the Atlas continued throughout the Mercury program. And now, here, all these years later, we've got a crew going to the station on an Atlas V. It's also interesting that this is the sixth human-rated spacecraft, American. And you think back, there was first Mercury, then Gemini, then Apollo, then the Space Shuttle, then Dragon. Now we have the Boeing Starliner. And next year, we should have our seventh human-rated spacecraft when the crew of Artemis II will launch and circle the moon. So this is another milestone in this extraordinary history of NASA. And I want to give my personal congratulations to the whole team that went through a lot of trial and tribulation, but they had perseverance. And that's what we do at NASA. We don't launch until it's right. And so for Boeing and the ULA teams, the NASA teams, congratulations to all of you. Now, Butch and Suni do what they do best. They're test pilots. And they're going to test this thing from izzard to gizzard. And they're going to certify it for a rotational basis to send crew to the International Space Station. So now with Dragon and Starliner, the U.S. is going to have two unique human space transportation systems. And that, of course, we always like to have a backup. That makes it safer for our astronauts. And that's why we started the commercial crew program in the first place, partnering with U.S. companies to deliver safe and reliable spaceflight at the same time of cutting the cost. So it's different from the old days, but we go with our commercial partners now. And when we expand our fleet of spacecraft, what we're doing is expanding our reach to the stars. And that will be true of the Artemis program as well, where you will have two landers that will be available to the NASA crews to go down to the surface of the moon. So this is a special moment. It's another one of those great markers in history, and it is a program that what NASA does is hard. Space flight is hard, but it's worth doing. So my congratulations to the team, and do you want me to turn it back to you or turn it over to Sox?
We can go ahead and hand it
Ken
over.
Bowersox, our Associate Administrator.
Thank you, sir. Great words. It's great to be here with you today. Thanks to all of you for being here with us. Thanks for hanging in there with us as we've worked a few issues over the past few weeks. I know it's really easy to lose patience as you're waiting for launches to happen. But as I said before, good things are worth waiting for, and I hope you agree with me that today's launch was definitely worth waiting for. It was beautiful. It was great to see the smiles on Butch and Sonny's face as they were getting close in the count and hearing their voices after they were safely on orbit. It was also really impressive to watch the NASA, Boeing, and ULA team as they work through the issues over the last few weeks. It's easy to get impatient. It's easy to get tired. I was so impressed with the professionalism of the whole team and the way they kept their priorities in the proper order and made sure that we were really ready to go today. There's a lot ahead of us. The crew has a lot of test flight objectives. We need to get them to station. We have some work there at station, and then we have the return. And there are a lot of different things that the program will be working through as they go through each of those phases, and they'll talk more about that. But I'm really looking forward to seeing 2 U.S. vehicles at the International Space Station. I know Butch and Sonny will probably get a kick out of that if they get a chance to look out the windows and see a Dragon there, see a Starliner there. It's something that I think all of us should be proud of and that I'm personally looking forward to. We've got a prescribed landing date that goes along with this launch date. I just want to emphasize that nobody should get too excited about that date. We have to have a lot of conditions that are just right before we bring the Starliner home, and we're going to wait till the conditions are right and we've accomplished the test objectives before we do that. So we may see, some additional time elapse before we actually bring them home. But the reason we'll be doing that is to make sure we gather all the data we need to gather and to make sure that it's the right day to bring Butch and Sonny back to Earth. And now I want to turn it over to Steve Stich, the Commercial Crew Program Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. It's great to be here today. It's great to see so much interest, and boy, what a heck of a day it was today. So proud of our entire team who've worked so long to get Starliner to this point. Congrats to the ULA team, United Launch Alliance, Tori and his team. You know, the Atlas did a great job today getting Starliner, Butch and Sonny on orbit. Very smooth ride. Congrats to Mark and his team for all the great work to get the vehicle ready, operating the vehicle, getting it ready, and thanks to Joel as well in the space station program, for supporting us. And we got some pretty good objectives to do when we get to the station in about 24 hours from launch. Today was just a great countdown. It was nice to get into a countdown again. The weather was very good, probably as good as you could ever ask for in Florida. We got through the countdown. We checked manifold 2, port doghouse, helium leak. That was right where we left it when we had the countdown on June 1st. No change in the leak rate at all. It was about half of what we had experienced back on the May 6th attempt. So that's going to be very manageable on orbit. All the other manifolds are doing really well. The ULA system, the ground system did a phenomenal job. Clicked through the countdown, very smooth countdown all the way through. And then, of course, we got the vehicle launched and a very smooth ascent. The rocket did a great job. We did a couple burns today already. The first burn, called the orbit insertion burn, about 31 minutes after launch for the orbital maneuvering and control thrusters. That burn went well, and we did a phasing burn about 12:07 Eastern time, and that went great as well. The only thing that we are watching a little bit is, we use a system called a sublimator to provide cooling during the launch phase and during the landing phase. And what that does is it creates a block of ice, essentially, and then that ice, as heat is passed into that ice block, that ice, a little thin layer of it turns into a vapor. and that rejects heat away. We used a little bit more water than we expected during the ascent. We have a backup system where we can go ahead and refill the sublimator tank. It was good to get this data and for this flight and understand it. The team let that sublimator run a little longer to collect some data. Once we got on orbit, we handed over to the radiator system for cooling. That's in the service module. That system is doing well. And so for the rest of the day, really it's about checking the spacecraft out. We will check out the NASA docking system and extend that ring and check it out today. We'll check out the rendezvous sensor system that will be used tomorrow for the rendezvous. Really important system. We'll get that checked out. And then we'll check out there's a camera that Butch and Sonny will use to monitor the approach to station. Tomorrow we'll check that system out. And then there's a whole host of other checkouts that we'll do today, some what we call operational checkouts to manually fly Starliner. So Butch and Sonny will maneuver to an attitude for communications. They'll maneuver to an attitude for to charge the batteries and practice doing that. They'll check out some of the hand controllers and the rotational hand controller and the translational hand controllers that we have. So it's really a big checkout day, and really the purpose of this is to learn all we can about Starliner. As Ken said, the major objective really is to get into crew rotation flights with this flight. So we're all set up for docking tomorrow. 12:15 Eastern is the docking time. And we're looking forward to that. And we'll keep watching the vehicle. Today is a big step, but it's one step of many steps in this flight test. We'll take it one day at a time. Thanks for your interest, and I'll turn it over to my good colleague, Joel Montalbano.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for joining us today. A historic day, an awesome launch. A huge congratulations to the Commercial Crew Program, the International Space Station Program, the Boeing team, United Launch Alliance, our international partners, and everybody who's been involved in this mission. Just a beautiful launch, and we look forward to an outstanding mission. As Steve said, we'll be docking tomorrow just after noon Eastern Time, 12:15. We'll start integrated ops with the International Space Station around 9 a.m. Eastern Time. This vehicle will dock to the forward port on the International Space Station. And as you heard from Steve and Ken, the real main purpose is to check out the vehicle. So the prime focus of Sonny and Butch when they're on board the International Space Station is to check out the vehicle. As they have time available, we have some space station tasks for them to do. But just an awesome way to start the summer. You know, we continue to be busy. We just had a progress docking this past Saturday. We got a number of spacewalks coming up in the month of June. We have 3 spacewalks, U.S. spacewalks scheduled for the team, and the teams are working forward and looking forward to that and working towards those activities. You know, right before I left here, I sent a note to the International Space Station team, and I said, hey, turn the porch light on, print out the Wi-Fi password, and set the table for 2 more for dinner. So we got a couple people coming to visit, and it's just an awesome mission. So thank you for your interest in human spaceflight. Our goal is to get 2 crewed vehicles delivering to the International Space Station, and this puts us one step closer. With that, I'll hand it over to Mark.
All right. Thanks, Joel. Well, thanks, everybody, for being here and really participating in such a great day. I have been getting just a barrage of texts and emails and congratulations, and I can't tell you how good that feels for our Starliner team to see so much support out there. So we really appreciate that. We talked earlier about the tens of thousands of parts that have to work on the spacecraft, on the launch vehicle, and on the ground, and even the weather has to work for us. And today it all lined up, and we had just a really perfect countdown and launch. Really want to thank our team, our Boeing team, NASA, ULA, and all our suppliers. There's suppliers all across the country that didn't get to be here today, but I know they're watching, and I know that they're really proud of their hardware and what we accomplished. And of course, above all, Sonny and Butch, because they really put so much into this to get us to this point and then get to execute this mission. They really are part of our family. A lot of people say I need to smile more, and I'm smiling, believe me. But it's a little bit of controlled emotion because there's a lot of phases of this mission, and we just completed the first one. Pre-launch and launch is just the first part of this. We now have to get to ISS. We have to dock. We have to do docking ops. We have to undock. We have to do re-entry, and we have to land. So each one of those phases we're going to really pay very, very close attention to, and our team is really focused on that. So that as we go through each piece of the mission, there's flight test objectives that we're going to go accomplish. And we've already started that, and Steve talked about a couple that we have in front of us to get to docking, and that's where our team is really going to be focused. This is a test flight. We've talked about this a number of times, and we're going to probably experience a few things that we got to go look into, and we'll do that, and we'll talk to you about them as time goes on. But we're going to learn from this, and we're going to have a great experience. We're on orbit with Butch and Sonny, and it's been a long time coming, and we're really, really proud of the team that got us here. Again, thanks to everyone for participating in this and getting us to this point. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Tori.
Thank you. Well, as you all know, this is our first time, and the bird made us work for it a little bit. Today we had a very quiet count, a dead nominal flyout, and I'm not allowed to release our orbital insertion accuracy bullseye yet because it's preliminary, but that might be the best one we've ever done. After we separated, Administrator Nelson and Pam Milroy turned to me and said, does this feel any different, Tori? Yesterday I knew that I have I'm coming up on 450 personal launches. Pretty sure I'd seen everything. But I have to tell you, there is absolutely nothing like this. And we are very, very proud to join this human spaceflight community. And I also have to acknowledge the very important contribution of Tony, because she showed me this morning that today, for the first time in this sequence, she had worn her lucky astronaut earrings, and then look at the result. So thank you very much. Proud to be with you all.
Thank you all for those opening remarks. We're now going to open up the floor to questions to media here in the room and over the phone. As a reminder for those joining over the phone, you may press *1 to ask a question. Let's start here in the room with Joey Roulette right there.
Thanks, Joey Roulette with Reuters. For Steve, you said you guys aren't tracking anything right now. Was the launch and deployment up until right now completely perfect? Did everything look fine besides the single thing you mentioned, or did anything happen that was off nominal? And for Mark Nappi, this obviously is a crucial moment for Boeing, and the mission's not over yet. But if you can speak a little bit to the broader kind of goals that the Starliner program plays for the company, if everything goes as planned, what does that mean for the company, and how do you guys move forward from that? Thanks.
Yeah, so far we're really not tracking hardly anything. There was one temperature sensor that was showing a little warmer than the other sensor in the cabin, so it's near a light. So the team basically disabled that sensor from providing feedback. That was about the only thing that the team worked. And then again, the sublimator usage, the water usage. Water in space, if anybody followed the space shuttle program years ago, we used something called a flash evaporator system, where we flashed water into space to take heat away from the coolant loops. And that was a problematic system that would freeze up and have funny. So anytime you use a system with water in space and you've got ice and liquid and then the vapor of steam, it's very tricky. So I think we're going to learn a little bit about that system. We have this refill capability we'll use to fill the system back up before we come home and land. But other than that, so far the vehicle's been doing well. And really the purpose of these checkouts is to understand the vehicle better, and then we'll look at the data in real time. We'll have a review every day of the spacecraft. We'll have one tomorrow when we get back to Houston. But so far the vehicle's doing great.
Means a lot to us, and the program means a lot to Boeing. My boss was here today, my boss's boss was here today, and my boss's boss's boss was here today. So obviously it means a ton to us. This is the first step, of the mission. So we got to go through these phases, and then when we get back, it's about certification. It's finishing up the certification so that we can be certified for the Starliner 1 mission, and it's getting that hardware ready for the Starliner 1 mission, and then getting a spot in the manifest with Joel and Dana and Steve on ISS for that Starliner mission. So that's really our focus for the next year is to get those things behind us.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and take this lady right here in the second row, right up front.
Hi there. Kristen Fisher with CNN. Big congratulations to everyone on a successful launch. Mark, a question for you and one for Joel, I believe. Mark, so much has been made of the competition between SpaceX and Boeing over the last decade or so. I'm curious how you view that competition over the last 10 years. Elon Musk sending his congratulations to the entire team. How would you describe that competition? And then for Joel, if we could just get an update on when that faulty pump on board the ISS will actually be replaced, how long that would take. Thanks.
I think you guys think it's a competition. We don't see it as a competition. We've got two providers that are going up to the International Space Station, and SpaceX is up there, and we're up there now as well. So this is something that NASA has planned, and we've accomplished it. And of course, that next step is certification. I saw the tweet. That's awesome. And you know, I sit on my front porch and I watch every SpaceX mission, and I root for them too. This is something that's great for the entire country.
And on the pump change out, we're going to get to that as soon as we can. My hope is we get to it this week. If not, it'll be early next week.
Thank you. We'll go right here up front.
Thanks, Tony. Congratulations, everyone. This is James from Channel 6. I'd like to start with Mark 2, and maybe if Steve, Ken, and Mr. Administrator would like to chime in. As excited as you are, Mark, good to see you smile. I know that you might have a message in the back of your mind, perhaps, for the harshest critics of Starliner's program. Is there anything, I know you're focused on the mission at hand, but what would you like to say to those who may have even called for the cancellation of the program after all the delays? There are those who thought Butch and Sonny would never fly. Thank you.
Yeah, we talked to our team a lot about just ignoring a lot of the stuff that you read. You know, we focus on the positive, we focus on the accomplishments, and we learn from the setbacks that we've had. It's been this way in human spaceflight my entire career. You know, Steve talked in the last press conference where he's got 37 or 38 years, I think. You know, I started thinking I've got 39. It's not a competition, but I got 39 years.
I'll try to beat you.
And I think about, you know, over the years, you know, how many bad headlines I've read about the shuttle program, International Space Station. And then I look back at those programs and look at how successful they were. You know, we had an incredible run with the space shuttle, and arguably we put the most incredible, fantastic engineering feat ever with assembling the International Space Station in space. And you know, someday we're going to be looking back at this program the same way.
And I'll add a little bit to that question. I got a lot of texts today too from a lot of people that I work with who were former shuttle employees. I got texts from the SpaceX community. I got texts from a broad range of people, all working in human spaceflight. I think the text to me meant a whole heck of a lot because they know how hard it is, right? I think we sometimes don't talk about the challenges of getting to flight. I look back 4 years ago at Demo 2 and the challenges of getting to that flight. We had to redesign the parachute system on Dragon before that flight in the year before. We redesigned the propulsion system before. Starliner has had, you know, every development program has challenges on getting there. Space Shuttle had challenges. It was behind schedule on launching. Every single program, I think, you know, it's just so hard to put all the pieces together. As Mark said, they all have to work as planned. You qualify them, you test them, and then you learn about them and you fly them in space. And so we've stood side by side with Boeing working hard. We need two providers. We need two space transportation systems. It's hugely important to us. I think the whole community knows that. And it's just a tough endeavor to get to flight. And huge kudos to the entire team for getting there today. You know, the administrator talked about perseverance, hard work, dedication. that's what I see from our team every single day. I wish I could explain it here, but these people are working long hours and figuring out ways to solve problems, whether it's a Boeing employee, a NASA employee, United Launch Alliance employee. So it's just great to be part of the team.
We don't need.
You're hot.
That button, do I?
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, folks like to judge early, and I would exercise caution doing that. You really don't know how great a program is until after it's finished. That's what I've seen with airplane programs and other aerospace programs through the years. It's also important to remember that we want more than one provider. It's really important to us, not just for ISS to have redundancy there, but we're trying to develop a new economy in low Earth orbit. And to do that, we want to have a field with multiple competitors. We'd like to see 3, 4 someday, right? And it starts by developing 2. Sorry to cut you off, boss.
Not at all. Not at all. He's the real deal. Former space commander. The overall answer to your question is space is hard. And you better not mess it up by not going when you've tried out everything and you know that it is as safe as possible when you put a human on board. And sometimes that takes time. And the proof's in the pudding. Look what we've been through in all of the different space programs of NASA from the very get-go. And sometimes they were very painful. And when we didn't get it right, because mistakes were made, we, the entire country, suffered. So my hat's off to the team here. They waited until they got it right. As Joel said, we've still got some to come. Steve said this too, because this is the first time that the spacecraft that doesn't have wheels, like the shuttle did, is going to land on land. And it's going to come down in the Utah desert as the primary site. And so this is a whole new adaptation. So they waited until it was right.
Thank you. Well, we'll take it right here up front.
Yusuke Tomiyama, the Yomiuri Shimbun, Japanese Daily. My question is for Senator Nelson. You mentioned further lunar exploration in your first remarks, so I'd like to ask you, apart from Starliner, China's lunar probe successfully collected samples from far-side moon surface for the first time. So what do you think on this achievement, and do you have any plan to collaborate with China for science research of these samples? Thank you.
Did you specifically ask at first about Chang'e 6 that landed on the far side of the moon? Okay. Well, my congratulations to the Chinese space program. I have said over and over that they have a very good program. They have made lots of progress in the last 10 years. I would like very much, and have said this publicly many times, for them to be more transparent, more open, less secretive. And yes, we need to cooperate on things. The one thing that we did cooperate on was deconfliction in Mars orbit. But there are plenty of other opportunities for deconfliction and cooperation. And I would welcome that. But of course, today, and I respect your question, today is about the Boeing Starliner.
All right, we're going to take some questions over the phone. First up, we have Michael Sheets with CNBC.
Hi, everybody. I believe my question is best answered by either Steve or Mark, but for the 25 hours after launch, we're not going to have onboard live views or even delayed views of the crew like we've seen with Dragon, even going back to using TDRS before. So curious as to why that is. If there are onboard cameras, is this a matter of cost that we can't bring this feed back down until the International Space Station is reached by Starliner? Appreciate any clarification here.
Yeah, we do have a camera on board, a system called Mustang. It is not active for live feed during flight, but once we do get to station, we'll get feed, and of course when we get back down, we'll be able to get all the video. We are looking at being able to provide live feed in flight, but that won't be for a couple of flights.
All right. Next up, we have Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal.
Hi, thank you so much. Mark and Steve, is it possible to say how many out of the, I believe it's 87 test flight objectives are already kind of crossed off, given where the mission is just right now? And could you describe just what are one or two of the more higher risk moments from here on out? Thanks so much.
It certainly is possible to cross off all the flight test objectives, but I don't have those numbers in front of me. But I can kind of give you a little bit of a summary of what they look like. There's a little bit of manual flying that would like Butch and Sonny to do with the hand controllers. That'll happen here in the next day. And then there's a lot of, I'll call them ergonomic types of flight test objectives. How do the seats fit? How do the suits work? How do the displays look? And and there's numbers that are associated with all those things that I just rattled off that add up into the 87. And then of course when we get close to docking, we'll do some more. And when we get docked, there's additional ones as simple as how does the cargo come out and how does the cargo go back in. Those are the types of flight test objectives that will be satisfying. Steve?
Yeah, I think Mark said it well. We don't have the exact number today because they're happening as we speak here. Maybe we could talk a little bit about what we've accomplished after we dock. The big things coming up. Obviously, docking is a high interest event when you're bringing two vehicles close to each other, like Starliner as it approaches the forward port of station. That's a huge, big event for us. A very integrated event between the Starliner flight control team and the International Space Station flight control team. And then, once we get docked, we have a big objective to demonstrate what we call safe haven. So that's a demonstration where we have the crew go into Starliner and use only the Starliner assets. If something were to happen on station, we have this capability in both Dragon and very soon Starliner. We'll demonstrate that. And then at the end, obviously, the deorbit and landing are huge events that we'll continue to learn a lot about. I would say one thing, about the spacecraft is this is the first time with a crew on board. So first time that the life support system is operating today. We've tested it on the ground. It worked great, but we're learning a little bit about that as well. Huge important objective for the flight as well.
Thanks. We're going to take one more question over the phone before we come back to the room. We have Andrea Leinfelder with the Houston Chronicle.
Hi, congrats on the launch today. Understanding that these could change, can you give me the dates you expect Starliner will undock from the station, and then the date and location you're targeting for landing? Thank you.
Yeah, we have a number of landing opportunities. The first one would be the earliest would be June 14th. We would undock around 3:17 in the morning. That would be Central Time. With a landing around 8:38 Central Time. That would be at White Sands Space Harbor. What we really want to do is kind of look at the overall mission as it's going, and then Joel has some activities on the space station, and so we may adjust that date a little bit to accomplish some International Space Station activities. There's nothing magic about that date. A few days later, we have another set of opportunities as well. So we'll take a little time once we get docked. Work with Joel and his team. He talks about some spacewalks that they would like to do as well, and so we'll work out the choreography of all those different events. But right now we're really focused on Starliner and docking tomorrow.
All right, we'll take some questions here in the room. We'll go to Ken Kramer.
Hi, thank you. Congratulations to everybody. It was spectacular to see that after so many years of hard work. So Ken Kramer, Space Up Close, right? So, Tori, I want to follow up on a question I asked you at the end of the last briefing. You mentioned that, you don't do the RAN steering, and it's a unique orbit, suborbital, actually, that you deliver it to. So I guess, and for safety reasons. So I'm kind of curious, why don't you use a third SRB to get to orbital velocity?
Oh, sure. Great question. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, RAN steering, right ascension ascending node, is a guidance technique that allows one, if you have enough energy and the guidance algorithms to pull it off, to give you a larger launch window when you're going to a target like the International Space Station, which is an intercept target, because there is only one perfect instantaneous moment to go for the least energy. That technique allows you to go early or go late, and then without wasting very much energy, re-intersect onto that ideal path. We don't do that here because it would not benefit safety, and we don't energy for it. We certainly could put a third booster on, third solid, and go orbital, but the whole idea behind this trajectory is that there are no blackout periods all along its path where the G-forces would be too great in an emergency abort separation of the capsule for the astronauts to be uninjured, and at the end of that journey, we're just short of orbital velocity, so that if, God forbid, the propulsion system on the wonderful Starliner did not function properly, they would still get a free return safely to the Earth. So it's all about crew safety. It's really not about performance. And that gives us every possible chance to make sure the crew is safe throughout that trajectory. That causes us to fly low and flat for us, which is why we have an extra RL-10, because you need more thrust to do that. Does that make sense?
Well, I still don't understand why the third SRB doesn't change the situation.
We could put a third SRB and we could go orbital, but then at that point, if we didn't have propulsion on the capsule, they could not free return. They'd be stuck in orbit until they naturally decayed, which might take a while.
I think you'd have to look at what does that do to your acceleration profile in first stage. If you had a third solid rocket motor on the side, that's going to get you going a little faster in that first stage. And then we'd have to go look at, as Tori said, what we want to have is if anything happens to the rocket, essentially the starting point for the capsule trajectory is where the rocket is. And so you have to look at the Gs and the heating and the heat shield on the way on the other side. So it's all optimized for the two solid rocket motors, for crew safety, for aborts, and then you essentially have almost a free return back to even Edwards Air Force Base should we not be able to do any of the burns. There's a small burn you could do to get to Edwards, and then on the second orbit also you could go to Edwards Air Force Base as a safe landing, as a contingency site. So.
Thank you. We'll bring it over here to this gentleman.
Hi, thank you. Sawyer Rosenstein, NSF. I guess for Joel or Mark, kind of continuing off the other question there, what would be some of the test objectives that might influence whether or not you go beyond the week docked to the ISS? Is there anything in particular that would benefit from that extended time, or that would require extended time that you could do if you stay docked?
To me, you got to check out the system and see what the system gives you, right? And so if we see something that wasn't as expected, and we're like, hey, another day would allow some extra time to go look at that system, then we'd stay. I mean, there's not a specific list of, hey, these 10 things are going to require more time. It's more watch the system, see how it operates, and if it requires more time, we have more time.
Thank you. We'll toss it to Lauren Grush.
Lauren Grush with Bloomberg. I think my question is for Steve or for Mark. You mentioned that you weren't really working any issues, but I am curious how this flight is comparing to the experience of the uncrewed test flight that you had and the issues that were experienced during that mission. Do you feel confident that those problems have been resolved based on what you're seeing with this flight?
I can start off, obviously on orbit flight test 2, the uncrewed flight. We saw some OMAC thrusters that that failed off during the orbit insertion burn. Today, you know, that first burn, I was really excited to watch it. I think it was like about 72 meters per second. I'm an old trajectory guy, so I kind of like burns. But all 4 OMACs fired in each doghouse. The control was just perfect. Those did really well. I didn't get to see the second maneuver, which was the phasing burn, but that went really well. So we had a couple things, you know, happen early on that we've seemed to gotten past with. I know Mark's talked about, you know, we think the leading cause of those failures was a little contamination in some of the propellant lines in those doghouses that they failed off. It was all in the same doghouse, actually. So far, the OMAC burns, these are pretty good-sized thrusters, 1,500 pounds of thrust. Those have gone really well, and I'll see if Mark has anything to add.
Yeah, we had our cooling system had a little bit of a freeze up on OFT2. We had worked on that by removing some filters so that it would operate a little bit more smoothly. Of course, we didn't have crew on OFT2, so that contributed to the problem. There wasn't as much heat in the crew module. And this time, it appears everything's working fine, so I think we have that problem licked.
Thank you. We're going to go back to the phone. We have Mike Wall with Space.com.
Thank you all for doing this. And yeah, I'd just like to say congratulations on a successful launch and a successful mission so far. Just a quick question, maybe for Mark or for Steve. Have you heard much from Sunny and Butch about Starliner and like how it's handling and what are their thoughts about the spacecraft so far?
Steve, I haven't heard anything at all. I've been busy preparing for this and a little bit of celebration.
Yeah, I have not either. I know they were going to call down, you know, I talked about some of the things they were going to do, some of the manual maneuvers in the hand controller checkout, rotational hand controller, and the translation hand controller, and they were going to call down to the ground, I think probably about right now during this event, and so we haven't really heard too much from them. They've been really focused on, you know, clicking through a bunch of objectives, getting the spacecraft set up for orbit, doing the maneuvers we talked about, and doing the checkout. So I don't know, but we'll get some information from them later today.
Next up, we have Issam Ahmed with AFP.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. First of all, for Steve, I was wondering if you could reflect a little bit on the fact that, you know, you've been in this your job for so long now, and to see this day finally come. Could you reflect a little bit on what that means to you? And for Ken, specifically, I think you mentioned earlier in the call that you might like to expand these commercial providers to 3 or 4. Could you sort of go into further details about what you meant by that? Because I hadn't heard about that before. Oh, and finally for Steve, if I could sneak in one more. Regarding the sublimator, you're pretty confident that you'll have enough water backup for the landing? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll take the first question. You know, I just felt really proud today of the team. Having been with the team for 8.5 years now as the deputy program manager, I see the hard work of the team and just felt, you know, a sense of accomplishment from watching the team work so hard, of getting this first step done, of getting Butch and Sunny on orbit, getting a couple burns executed. It was a bit of an emotional time for me because you just see how hard people work, and they put their blood, sweat, and tears into it every day of their life. Sometimes their families, you know, suffer as they work nights and weekends on analyses or resolving challenges, and just super proud of the entire team. When I say team, I talk about the NASA team, the Boeing team, United Launch Alliance team, the Space Station Program team, and as Mark mentioned, we get to work with a lot of suppliers as well on the NASA side. These people are committed to human spaceflight. They know how hard it is. They know what it takes, and I was just super proud of the team.
Yeah, when it comes to the additional providers, you know, we work with other providers in addition to Boeing and SpaceX and the Dragon and Starliner teams to help them as they're thinking about someday building crew vehicles or converting their vehicles to crew. But we don't have any procurement in place to do that, nothing where we're going out trying to buy additional services at this point. But I would love to see the low Earth orbit economy grow so much that we need all those vehicles, right? So that was behind my statement is I would like to see that growth in low Earth orbit so that we see this vibrant activity with lots of different launches with lots of different vehicles someday.
I think there was a second question I failed to answer on the sublimator. There is a refill kit, and it's able to refill the tank. Essentially, you carry up some spare water, and there's a connector hose that hooks up to the system, and that should provide all the water we need for the landing. So.
Thank you both. We'll now head back to the room. We have Manuel Masanti over here.
Thank you, Tony. Manuel Masanti, Exploración Espacial. Question for Mark. I understand that Boeing has 2 operative capsules right now, Calypso in orbit and another one preparing for Starliner 1. Do you have the intention of having more of them? Like a third one is being in production, or with 2 is fine for the operational missions? Thank you.
For the flight rate that we have right now, flying once a year, 1 is plenty. But to fly twice a year, which is a request from NASA on our contract, we need 2 capsules, so to turn them every 6 months. So 2 is sufficient for what is in the plan. If, like Ken talked, if there becomes a low Earth orbit market where there's additional international space stations, additional flights, then that would drive additional vehicles.
Thank you. We'll now go to this gentleman up front here.
Yes, hi, Bert Dicht from the National Space Society. I'd like to ask a question to Tori. You mentioned this is your first crewed launch of a spacecraft, and obviously you'll be going through your processes and procedures as you prepare for the next one, but any initial impressions about everything in terms of this flight?
Yes. Well, I'll just say that, we had, as you know, 2 scrubs that preceded this. And they were routine issues that, we'll be able to take corrective actions for and be less exposed to that kind of issue going forward. So it gives us a little bit more focus on launching on time as well as mission success. I was proud of my team that they took no shortcuts. And throughout this process, we kept focused on Sonny and Butch because that is a more precious payload than we have ever flown before. So yes, like the Starliner team, like the NASA team, every mission is followed by, a hot wash and lessons learned and improvements going forward.
Thank you, Tori. Next up, we have this lady right here up front.
Gina Sinceri, ABC News. I'm not sure who would know the answer to this. Did Butch and Sonny say anything on the ride up to you or any response?
Who was the question for?
Did Butch and Sonny say anything? Is that what your question?
Right. Did you get any feedback from them on the experience going up?
I didn't copy anything on the comm loops. I mean, they were professional test pilots on the way up, looking at the various abort boundaries and looking at the systems. And, you could tell they were excited and ready to go. We heard their remarks before they lifted off. And so, no, I don't think they said much. I can imagine their faces when they got in orbit. And, in 0G, and just imagine how excited they were congratulating each other to be in space and after participation in this whole development of Starliner. So.
My guess is they never lost their smile.
Yeah.
They did congratulate Tori for becoming part of the Human Spaceflight Club, which I think we need to cut his tie or something.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Thank you. We'll now go back to the phone. We have David Denault with About Space Today.
Good afternoon. And I guess it's not maybe a coincidence that both the administrator and the associate administrator are sitting next to each other. But gentlemen, each of you had a unique experience. STS-61C and STS-73, long delays. How do you put yourself in like Butch and Sonny and all of their delays? What was that like?
Okay, well, first I'll say that the administrator and I he actually has the record because he did it first, but they scrubbed 6 times on his launch, and on one of my launches we scrubbed 6 times. So Bush and Sonny, they didn't come anywhere close to that, right? They were in quarantine probably longer than I was because of the distance between their scrubs. But what I found with each one of my scrubs was we were a little more relaxed, a little more prepared, and we got a little more rested, and we were really good at strapping in by the time we got a few under our belt. I don't know. What about you, sir?
Same thing. At least the weather was not a concern for the 3 times on Starliner. The weather certainly played a big part with regard to some of our scrubs. So, yeah, it gets old hat when you strap in, and it's just another day at the ranch.
Thank you. We can now take one more in the room. We'll go to Will Robinson-Smith right there.
Thank you, Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now. Appreciate the time and congratulations again. Question for either Ken or Steve. Assuming that everything goes well with the rest of this mission, you get back, you get through the data, and you press on to Starliner 1 next spring, has a decision been made on the seat swap agreement with Roscosmos and their cosmonaut and how that flight situation will work in 2025? Thanks.
Well, on the seat swap agreement, I'll talk about that, and Steve can talk about the other part. Our Russian colleagues want to get more data and see how this mission goes, and then we'll talk with them. They've said previously that they want to see 3 crewed flights before they're ready to do a seat swap. So we need to work through that with them, and Joel might have something to add there. He's been working that when he was the ISS program manager.
Yep, we already have 1 seat on the Dragon mission, but the plan is to get to do the crew swap on both vehicles as quickly as we can. And so, as Ken said, we'll be watching this mission, taking lessons learned, and then as quickly as we can, we're going to be putting that in place.
Yeah, and our goal is to, once we get the flight back, get Butch and Sonny back landed safely, evaluate the data, complete the certification that Mark's talked about, and then, we'll get Starliner in the rotation as soon as we can.
Thank you. We have time for one more question here in the room. All right, we'll go to Jeff Faust right there.
Jeff Faust of Space News. Probably for Steve or Mark, just to follow up on an earlier question about video from inside the capsule. How long after Starliner gets to the station will you be able to bring back some of that video? I think there's a lot of interest, maybe even expectation to see what it's like inside Starliner.
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not sure, Jeff. I know we'll have to downlink the data. It's all recorded on board Starliner, and then I assume we'll get it down within a day or so of docking. But I don't know the details of that, so I apologize.
We'll make sure to get that information for you, Jeff. Thank you all to our panelists, and thank you to all the media. That's all the time we have for today, but we want to thank everyone for taking the time to ask their questions and for our panelists for answering them. Starliner is scheduled to dock to the forward-facing port of the station's Harmony module tomorrow, June 6th at approximately 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time. You can follow along starting at 9:30 a.m. on NASA Plus, the NASA app, and YouTube. And here's a look at the highlights of this historic day. Thank you, and go NASA, go Boeing, and go CFT.
Here are the astronauts, Commander Butch Wilmore and pilot Sonny Williams, as you can see, suiting up for their mission into the history books.
This is a tradition. The whole idea here is to lose to the chief.
Out of the suit-up room, Commander Butch Wilmore and pilot Sonny Williams walking to an elevator at the end of the hallway. Our CFT crew taking their first steps outside, now en route to Launch Pad 41.
Crew transport vehicle is entered the pad.
Butch and Sonny arriving on level 12.
Last look at planet Earth for a while, saying hi to us. Hi, Sonny.
Butch getting in there.
Gotten strapped into their seats here.
Hatch closure complete. Roger.
3, 2, 1, ignition. And liftoff of Starliner and Atlas V, carrying 2 American heroes, drawing a line to the stars for all of us.
Commander Butch Wilmore, they're calling down to Mission Control here in Houston that the spacecraft has begun rolling into right attitude for its ascent, and Guidance, Navigation, and Control Officer here in the room seeing good data on that.
Everything continuing to go smoothly now, over 2.5 hours into today's mission of the Starliner flight. Next major milestone that we are looking ahead towards are the far field piloting checkouts that we've been discussing.